This is a hearing before the Office of the State Engineer. It's on two change applications, A44045 and A44046. I'm Teresa Wilhelmsen, Assistant State Engineer, work in the Salt Lake office, and I'll introduce who else is up here with me. To my right is Ross Hansen, and he is our regional engineer out of our Utah Lake, Jordan River area office, which is also based here in our Salt Lake office. Next to him is Eric Jones, and he is the Assistant Regional Engineer in the Utah Lake office. And to my left is Clark Adams, and he is our Appropriations Specialist that also works here in Salt Lake.
Acting Counsel for Echo Association, and Mark Tracy regarding with the KETAM action as far as other actions. As quick introduction, want to mention to the people of the audience, Steve Onisco, formerly with the Division of Drinking Water, is here. Steve is the one who had done an original report back in 2002 regarding concerns on some of the wells and specifically on the reservoir at issue, so could be available to answer questions if asked. I also send a shout out to Representative Brian King. It's a pleasure of him to be here, but this water area is within his area. Finally, just one quick comment. Mr. Barnett mentioned the Barnett-Yankee report. We've heard about this a couple different times over the years. We've never seen it. I would hope that that's something that we can get into the record, or even more specifically, to allow experts like Dr. Hansen to have the opportunity to review it themselves, because if they're making their primary decisions based on this research, it's probably something that we all need to see, especially at this time. And time over to Mark.
Mark Tracy, Immigration Canyon Homeowners Association. I also like to state that we have also filed a grammar request for all hydrological data several years ago with Immigration Improvement District, justifying the locations of these wells and the scientific study to back those up. That grammar request was refused. About 20 days ago, we celebrated 100 years of water litigation in Emigration Canyon. The original water litigation in Emigration Canyon, get my clicker to work, there we go, was actually commenced in 1918. This is a copy of the file, civil case 25890. This file, even though it's very, very important to the stream flow at the mouth of Emigration Canyon, portions and the allotment thereof, it was never to be filed, and I've been working on this case now for 4 years. I've never seen this civil case decree until it was handed to me about 2 weeks ago from an old file. What exactly does it say? Well, it talks about, thanks. Is that better? Perfect. It talks about this area that we have here, Emigration Canyon, of course. Civil decree determined what exactly the flow would be at the base of Emigration Canyon, the surface water flow. 2/3 of that was determined to belong to the James E. Hogle Mount Olivet Cemetery Association. 1/3 flow was, however, not adjudicated at that time, which Immigration Improvement District is claiming here today. The applications concern the movement of surface water from the base of the canyon here based upon that flow to higher points within the canyon via underground water rights. Immigration Improvement District has argued today that for some magical reason, more homes will actually increase the flow of the Immigration Canyon stream. And that's absolutely ludicrous. The points that you see here off to your right-hand side is the Immigration Oaks development, which was put into place by the Boyer and City Development companies back in the early 80s. Now, if we were to talk about the groundwater development in Immigration Canyon, the scientific study, the hydrologist, I could hire a hydrologist to do that. I could hire an expert, or it would be very, very much easier to basically look at Immigration Improvement District's hydrology, stand here with a stupid look on my face and say, yeah, exactly what that guy said. And of course, these are the wells that we're talking about here today that were actually studied. You'll see here, contrary to Immigration Improvement District's presentation, you see 4 large diameter commercial wells. The 2 wells identified as the Brigham Fork well and the Upper Freeze Creek well were drilled and have been operated since 2003 and 2013 under temporary change applications, not permanent change application. In fact, when EID drilled these two wells, they ignored 33 other possible permanent points of diversion in order to put these wells located where you see them here today. Now, the question is, what would happen if this board, the Utah Division of Water Rights, denied EID's permanent change application? Well, I'm going to let EID answer that question themselves. This is a copy, This is a copy, it's also available on Immigration Improvement District's water site, of their water quality report required under the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974. What exactly does it say? Well, it says this. It lists all of their sources right here. If you were to deny the permanent change application as it's been presented, they would have these last remaining two wells, which have been operated and have been drilled under permanent change applications, not temporary change applications. And they say in this report that the Freeze Creek well produces 60 gallons per minute. It says well number two, Boyer well number two, produces 250 gallons per minute. That gives you a yield of 446,000 gallons per day, 13 million gallons per month, which is exactly double the requirements of the current Immigration Canyon residents. This water system, this permanent change application, is not for current residents. It is to remedy and to allow for massive new building development in Immigration Canyon. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So, Dr. Hansen, I won't spend too much time on this. Groundwater hydrology was actually very well researched by Mr. Don Barnett's father, Jack Barnett. Exactly what he said. Interference has not been a problem in 1966. It is likely that many more one-family domestic wells can be drilled and pumped without significantly interfering with wells already constructed in the system. Rule number one for Dr. Barnett, Mr. Jack Barnett, was you can drill wells, it's fine. Small diameter wells, not large diameter wells. That's the rule. He warns, if larger wells are constructed in areas where domestic well development has already taken place, and these wells produce large amounts of water, millions and millions and millions of gallons being extracted from the ground, it would produce influence with almost certainty. He notes also, it could be of significance. That's basically a fancy way of saying private well owners are going to know immediately that their wells are drying up. And that's exactly what happened. He notes rule number two in developing water in Immigration Canyon. He notes most of the homes and lawns of the canyon occupy lands that were irrigated from the stream. It is doubtful that much water is consumed on lands now that were used when irrigating fields. Rule number two, additional groundwater development in the future could interfere with surface water if the additional groundwater development were on lands that had not been irrigated in the past. Rule two, you can develop, just do it on lands that had been irrigated in the past. Water consumption should be the same. He notes the result would be greater water consumption of the canyon and lesser amount of water available to support the stream flow. That was his prediction. And I'm going to guess he was dead on the money. He notes in his thesis, there are, however, many acres of land in the canyon suitable for homes that are removed from the same canyon stream. Well, this is probably the understatement of the year. There's actually 1,800 acres that were later acquired by the Boyer Company, City Development, Immigration Peaks, Butler Crockett Walsh Development Corp., Kim Gardner, Walter Plum, Steve Kramer, Ira Sachs, David Nuschler, John Walsh. These are some of the largest developers in the state of Utah, ladies and gentlemen. The most dire warning that Mr. Barnett gives, any reduction in stream flow will increase the concentration of bacteria in the stream and increase the opportunity for bacteria to contaminate existing domestic water supplies. His third warning, you dry up the stream, not only you dry up wells, if it's large diameter, you will be contaminating private wells at the same time. Well, let's take a look and see what happened. Let's talk about the Boyer and city development. We can use immigration in the canyon stream to help orient us, see what's going on. Running west to east, up Killian's Canyon. This is what the Immigration Canyon stream looked at one point in time. And of course, located on the north side is the Emigration Oaks PUD. Give us an idea how this developed. Well, in 1984, it was noted that Boyer was pushing to have Emigration Canyon annexed by Salt Lake City. And Boyer at that time controlled 1,000 acres up in Emigration Canyon. Now, what was Boyer willing to do to bring up water from Salt Lake City for this development? Well, they pledged to spend $42 million to build police and fire stations in the canyon. You can imagine what kind of profit was available and what they wanted to if they were willing to spend $42 million of their own money. How did that go? Well, it got shut down. Dan Gardner of the Boyer Company, said the company has dug its well capable of supplying all of its future water needs, eliminating the need for city water service. Well, did he read the Barnett thesis? Absolutely he did. He knew what it was. It had been cited many times, actually, during the development of the immigration. So what happened? Well, Immigration Improvement District decided to help him out. In 1982, December 1st, Immigration Canyon Improvement District decided to educate people on how water rights work. And this is true. During times of shortage, those individuals with the most recent water rights will be forced to curtail their water use, by entities with the more senior water rights will be allowed to use their full share. He warns that this could be exacerbated by this Little Dale project. What does he say about the EID's water rights? Well, and we are alleging in federal court that this is what we have called the fraudulent consolidation of senior water rights. He says that they own the most senior water rights in the canyon, and if people want to exchange or turn them in, they can. This continues to this day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the website of Immigration Improvement District, recorded not even a couple days ago. Holds the most senior water rights in the canyon, and you can exchange them. We believe that if the body approves the full temporary permanent change applications, that they will have a priority date of September 12th, 2018, and certainly not the most senior water rights in the canyon, which can be exchanged. So how did the development go? Let's take a look. Thanks to the good folks at Google, we can track exactly what happened. This is phase 1, 3, and 5 of the Immigration Oaks development. For orientation purposes, we can use the road, marked here in white. This is how the development increased in 9 of 1993. You have the Boyer tank at the top, Boyer well number 1, and you have water distribution lines running down from east to west. How do we know it's operational? Well, there's homes connected to it. Multi-million-dollar homes and million-dollar homes don't exist without water. And 15 units of the 27 parcels were sold as buildable. At this particular point in time, however, in 1988, this office received a dire warning from a person residing actually very, very close to Mr. Eric Cox, who stated and informed this body that their well had dropped suddenly 45 feet. At that time, Boyer had only pumped 2 million gallons out of that tank, out of that pump, according to the investigative report completed by Boyd Clayton of this office. And there was only 3 homes connected at that time. So what happened? Well, EID, gentleman sitting right here, filed a permanent change application for the point of diversion located here in August of 1993. Well, why is that problematic? It's problematic for one reason, is that that point of diversion that they'd identified, as we see here in this picture of 1997, turned out to be Boyer and City Well number 2. If you listen to the hearing from 1995, December 15th, under Water Share 577479, it is recorded on December 15th, 1995, that Boyer Well number 2 is operational for the system. The problem? That point of diversion was not approved by this office until the very end, December of 1996. They had actually been operating a year without permission. And how did the development look at that time? Well, take a look. Phases 1, 3, and 5, 69, 8 units of the 145 parcels are sold as buildable on the market. And the distribution line terminates here. You can see from this aerial photograph, nothing's been disturbed. What happens in 1998 is this. Boyer and City Development offers Emigration Oaks water system to EID as a gift. And the EID trustees approve it. This headache that was constructed contrary to the Barnett thesis, large diameter commercial wells built on areas that had not been irrigated in the past, which could influence the stream flow, is now a public problem and a public headache. What happened the next day is this. September 1998, Boyer and City Development, void of this headache, asked the Immigration Planning Commission to approve 51 new lots in the Immigration Oaks development. Who's on the Immigration Planning Commission? Let's take a look. Oh, the Planning Commission, Mr. Fred Smoka, EID trustee, manager. Lynn Hills, EID trustee, the same people that had taken over the water system actually were deciding whether Immigration Oaks was going to be expanded, and a massive expansion at that. Who's on the Immigration Advisory Committee? Well, Mr. Fred Smoka, Mr. Dick Moffitt of the Boyer Company, Mr. Walter Plum of the Holdings Company. They were there to advise all along the way. And we can imagine how that went. Well, it went this way. This was the original, and it was expanded out in these areas, a massive expansion of Immigration Oaks. Phases 4A, 6, and 6A, 77 parcels of Immigration Oaks development. Of the 224 parcels, a 34% expansion. Massive. How is that a problem? Well, that's a little bit of a problem because the good folks at Immigration Pubic District 2 years before, in May, put out an official newsletter. What did it say? It is the policy of the district that until such time as there is sound evidence of adequate, sustainable water resources, there will be no more than 185 future allocations of water. How is that determined? The 98 approved in Immigration Oaks will be minused from the 417, allowing for 185. Immigration Oaks expansion blew that number right out of the water, and even more, as we shall see. 2003, it looks like this. The federal complaint alleges that EID completed the water lines in phases 6 and 6A and a second access road using federally backed funds. How do we know it's operational at this time? Homes connected to it. So, this is the massive expansion. This is what was dropped in with the use of federally backed funds. Funds that were granted as a loan, as Mr. Eric Cox has talked about, and they are talking about future bonds and future loans to pay for this additional massive expansion. Of the 224 parcels is buildable, only 67 units were connected to a deficient water system and single road constructed entirely with private funds. 92 units, as you see here, were built with the assistance of federally backed funds. The estimated net profit from this, the federal complaint alleges $47 million. Again, this application talks about approval of these two wells that have been drilled and operated under temporary change applications. And this idea that it's already been approved and it's already been decided as has been presented to the member of the general public who actually came in and speak with your office is simply not true. EID let the temporary change applications on the Brigham Fork well lapse for about 5 years. There was no hearing on the last temporary change application that was filed by EID. None at all. It was simply rubber stamped. Let's talk about the next area of development in Emigration Canyon, which is concerning here, which explains exactly why Immigration Improvement District has not asked for approval for the existing canyon residents, but for the full 649 acre-feet of water. Again, Immigration Oaks PUD. This is the area of the canyon directly to the east and directly to the north, owned by the former CEO of Energy Solutions, Mr. R. Steve Kramer. Again, you will see, not used for agricultural use at all. How does it look after EID obtains $1.8 million of federally backed funds? Well, it looks something like this. You've got the Brigham Fork well, located on property belonging to Mr. R. Steve Kramer, the Wildflower Reservoir, million-gallon reservoir that was approved under the federal funds, and which the federal complaint alleges was also put on Mr. R. Steve Kramer's. And then you have something in the middle here. One of these things. That's Mr. R. Steve Kramer's private residence. Did Mr. R. Steve Kramer have a water right? No, he did not. Did Mr. R. Steve Kramer lease a water right from EID? Yes, he did. Have we submitted a grammar request showing that Mr. R. Steve Kramer paid for this leased water share? It was refused, and no payment has ever been shown. And this home requires your approval because it is leased as a water right from Immigration Improvement District. I believe point of diversion number 6 or 7. Here's the Brigham Fork well on Mr. Kramer's property. And there's the Wildflower Reservoir right on the other side. Now, when we started investigating this, we noticed that Mr. R. Steve Kramer had been alleged and confirmed by EID meeting minutes that he was dumping construction waste on the property. Now, it confused us at the time until we saw this photograph. His house was actually built at the exact same time the Brigham Fork well and the Wildflower Reservoir was constructed. And it could have not have been constructed without, because the EID's water system was deficient at that time, without constructing the Brigham Fork well and the Wildflower Reservoir. It was basically constructed with the active assistance of federally backed funds. What other things are going on here? Well, you have a north access road at this point and a 2-lane road which suddenly dead ends. Road base, drainage, all in place right at this minute. What had happened was Mr. Stephen Esco is here today in 2003, refused to certify the project. He basically told his boss, this is for massive future development. You can't use federal funds for this. He wrote a speedy memorandum dated October 18, 2002. On October 31st, EID, as recorded here by their attorney, Mr. Cook, had a conference with Mr. Hells and Mr. Spoka and Mr. Kramer regarding staff issues. It wasn't any staff issues. Stephen Esco refused to certify this massive building project. EID trustee Bowen was not informed of the objections. The memorandum from Dr. Onesco, dated here, was not recorded in the EID meeting minutes. Dr. Onesco's memorandum could not be retrieved from the file in the Utah State Archives in May of 2014. Simply disappeared. And the EID trustee meeting minutes to discuss this is unavailable. Let's see what else is going on up in Mr. R. Steve Kramer's property here. Oh, by the way, this is currently on the market. 183 acres is placed on the market about a year ago at an asking price of $10.7 million. Wildflower Reservoir, North Interior Road looks something like this, and the Brigham Fork well. I'm flipping too fast. There it is. Federal complaint alleges that the Upper Freeze Creek well, which they're asking your approval for today, that was drilled under a temporary change application, also ended up on Mr. R. Steve Kramer. And in 2013, EID constructed a 10-inch valve at the Boyer tank, again with public funds. And then you have the Boyer tank. Now we come to the issue. That deals with what exactly is intended with 649 acre feet. Now we come to the issue of public health, welfare, and safety, which I would argue is much more important than money. These are the requirements for water lines to be constructed under a public water system. As you see, minimum shall be 8 inches unless hydrological analysis indicates that required flow and pressures can be maintained with a 6-inch line. Well, let's see how that went. We have the Boyer tank, and you have a T-valve that was constructed. These pictures were taken in 2000. T-valve is covered by a sewer line cover, indicating it should be sewer underneath there, but it's actually public and domestic drinking water. It looks something like this. It diverts water from the Boyer tank and then takes it, and this valve is open to the bottom, south to the Immigration Oaks development. Up north, all of a sudden, it's closed, but it leads to the north. What's exactly to the north? Well, 50 feet from that point, you have a daylighting here of coming out, pointing, as you see, in the direction of nowhere land. And that's the size of the pipe. That's a 10-inch pipe, ladies and gentlemen. That goes to nowhere. What did Dr. Onesco require and ask for in 2002 when they submitted the plans to be reviewed and studied and approved? Well, he wanted a 10-inch line, and EID refused to give it to him. Why? Well, they refused to also consider a cost savings of $500,000 by constructing a more appropriately sized tank. The tank they wanted was 1 million gallons. Dr. Onesco said that's absolutely crazy. It only has to be 300,000 gallons, and you'd save $500,000 if it was appropriate. EID refused, and Dr. Onesco's boss approved this. Something that Emigration Canyon residents, the people behind me, will be paying for the next 5 years. And what exactly is this line here? This is a line that was actually installed by Emigration Canyon Improvement District in the main canyon. As you see, it is 6 inches. Now, there seems to be a little bit of a problem in Immigration Improvement District, as recorded in the EID meeting minutes, with the water distribution lines. These are the lines that were constructed with federally backed funds back in 2003. And this is the layout. You'll see that they reported to the federal government that they would be using 8-inch lines throughout their water system, as is required by Utah Administrative Code. You'll also see here the Brigham Fork well was proposed, and the Upper Freeze Creek well was completed not a half a mile from the Freeze Creek well, which is probably why you're confused on the points of diversion. That large diameter commercial wells would be constructed in such close proximity is questionable. So, June 4th, 2009, looks like there's water pressure problems in Immigration's water system. He explained that EID had replaced that meter for a single home 3 times, and the bottom keeps blowing off the meter. I wonder why. He notes they're recording PSI pressure in the Emigration Oaks water system of 160 PSI, but however, can't explain why there's low pressure areas in the canyon. Normal household pressure is 60 PSI. I wonder what the problem is. The problem is very, very simple. It was also recorded in EID trustee meeting minutes, as you see here in 2013. In attendance, Mr. Michael Hughes, sitting here today, Mr. Fred Smoka, and Joe Smoka, the current Immigration Canyon mayor, who is also Immigration Canyon's Improvement District project manager. What does this say? Mr. Steve Kramer refuses to give EID easement for an 8-inch line to put in their water system. What did they get? They got this. Is it a wise idea to push the last line of the construction through a 4-inch pipe? The engineer notes, it'll lose flow, as anybody with a 12th grade education will tell you. And they also told us what exactly the lines that the Boyer Company installed when they first put in the system. He notes, another option is to make a connection to the existing 4-inch line, branch it off, and valve it for an 8-inch line connection. The biggest problem was, however, this. Mr. Eric Cox notes 2016. They were basically replacing what's called a collar valve. I had spoken with Dr. Onesco and asked him, is a collar valve even allowed for public drinking water system? Yes, it is. It's basically a collar that goes around the main water line in order to allow you to tap into that, a live water feed. That's what a collar is. EID had been replacing those that had been originally installed by the Boyer Company for years. In Immigration Oaks, Dr. Onesco said, yeah, it's approved for drinking water, you can use it. But here's the problem. Well, Mr. Eric Cox confirmed that they have a 6-inch and 8-inch steel valve in stock, but not a 2-inch and 4-inch, and they will have to be ordered. You just told me what size lines that they installed in the Immigration Oaks system. A 2-inch line and a 4-inch line. And how is the system designed? This is what it's designed to do. This is the You'll see it the Boyer tank and the Upper Freeze Creek well here, completed in 2013, going up to a massive 10-inch line. And the very bottom of that, you can actually see the 400 feet that they were talking about for their new water line. This system, ladies and gentlemen, is not designed for the existing canyon users. It is intended to constrain water consumption and water flow to lower elevations where the pressure is higher and keep the water at the 10-inch line for a massive new future building development. That's how the system's designed, and that's what its intended use and purpose is. And that is exactly what they're asking you to approve today. You'll also see a large manhole cover for this area, so you can inspect the water lines easily. That's exactly what's in place there. But however, in the Emigration Oaks development installed by the Boyer City Development, you're only going to find covers this size. So if a valve goes dead, you have to excavate and dig up the whole entire thing. And that is indicative of the entire Emigration Oaks water system. We are arguing in federal court right now that they installed those valves, covers, in order to conceal the fact that the lines were massively undersized. Mrs. Suzanne Plum, a former member of the Emigration Canyon Community Council who is connected to the water system, will report that she has massive fluctuations in pressure where she'll be taking a shower and she can't even wash out her hair because the pressure drop is that high. We know that Immigration Improvement District is the only one who is allowed to do fire flow tests of the system. And we also know that they have recorded in their meeting minutes that they are constantly manipulating pressure reducing valves in the system. And the problem is this: 2015, as required under the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974, they're required to do a sanitation survey. Mr. Eric Hawks, gentleman in front of us today, was the system constructed new portions added after January 1st, 2007? His answer, no. Well, you have 26,000 existing at that time, 20,000 added in 2008, 4,000 added for the Upper Freeze Creek well 2013, and 46% of the distribution system was added after this date. Why does that date matter? Well, the requirements under the federal guidelines have changed. That's why he said that nothing had been added after 2007. Do all water main lines provide flow have a diameter of at least 8 inches? Yes. Well, he's going to have a hard time explaining how I got actually a piece of this that was installed in the main canyon. The most dire problem with Immigration Improvement District is this. This is a photo that we recovered when they were installing the lines down from the Wildflower Reservoir. You'll notice the color of the lines that are studied. It appears in this photograph that they are black. As we know from Dr. Inesco, water lines that are approved for drinking water are usually blue, light color. Based upon this photograph and based upon the manner in which this was constructed, as you can see here, the haste that it was constructed and who constructed it, we believe that Immigration Improvement District is distributing water with water lines that are not approved by drinking water and not approved under federal standards for safe drinking water. And that's our fear. Now let's talk about the, back to the flow. I'm screwed up my thing. Yet, as you note here, only the district, they did a fire flow test, which was wrong, of course. Has to be done again after you manipulate the pressure reducing valves, of course. Also reports problem with fire hydrants. Appears that they have issues with fire hydrants. Total 33 of their system needs maintenance. We have an trustee meeting minutes where it was noted that a fire hydrant, it looked like it had fallen over. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a fire hydrant fallen over unless it's basically not connected to the system. Why is fire a problem, Immigration? Absolutely not only for water depletion and everything that we've seen today. In 2002, they actually did a study of Immigration Oaks development, as published here. And this was actually published. This isn't like the Dr. Yankee thesis that was completed with Mr. Barnett here that was never published and nobody can get a copy of. This is a copy that you can actually see. It talks about Immigration Canyon, and it talks about the problem. Its main vegetation is the Gamble Oak, which is capable of supporting flames with a height ranging from 50 to 100 feet, moving at 8 to 10 miles per hour in high winds. This was compared to the Berkeley fatality in 1991. Since the time that this photograph was taken, these are the new homes that have been developed in Emigration Oaks. 92 units have been built in the area of Emigration Oaks. We know financial records that EID conducted 35 of the fire flow tests between 2004 and 2013. We believe those fire flow tests are inaccurate. Let's talk about the wildflower reservoir. And I'd like to say the fire flow tests become inaccurate the minute you reduce a pressure reducing valve on a water system. The exact same minute. This is a picture of the wildflower reservoir that a Canyon resident took during his construction. You see a massive hole in the side of it here. You see it filled with water. You'll see here that they filled the hole with what's called in construction as coffering out. Basically just add another layer on the outside of that. We've talked to our concrete experts who believe that that structurally may be sound, but it cannot be fixed. It's an absolute total deficiency. It can't be fixed because number one, it's drinking water, and number two, it'll leak, as you see here. You'll also see massive leaks in the water tank here. This is called a cold joint. Basically the idea, whoever built it, and I know who built it, is if you have a concrete pour and the one layer actually hardens and dries, and then you pull the next layer, you don't have consistency between the layers. It's called a cold joint, which is exactly why, along the line here, you see water leaking from the system. And you see the construction waste that was deposited on the system by Mr. R. Steve Kramer while he was the CEO of Energy Solutions. The problem is this. As recorded in August 2008, he notes that there is a workshop showing customer media readings through the month of July, approximately totaling 5 million gallons, resulting in a 3 million gallon discrepancy. Basically, the amount of water that they drew out of their large diameter commercial wells and the water that they sold to their customers, there was discrepancy, as recorded here, of 3 million gallons. I was at an EID meeting, but I invite you to look at the the Echo Association website, where I asked this very, very basic questions. What's the amount of water that you pump out of the ground, and what's the amount of water that you sell to your customers? Refused to answer the question precisely because of this reason, because you can see the discrepancy in that case. February 2017, Chairman Hughes, sitting right here in front of me, stated that there could be leaks in the Emigration Oaks Immigration Improvement District water systems with an additional 1 million gallons of water being reported per month since the wildfire reservoir was put into operation in 2003. That's chlorinated water going into the Emigration Canyon water system. We also know that numerous canyon residents up in the Pinecrest area have reported having found chlorinated water coming out of the Emigration Canyon stream and also the Henderson stream located at the top of Pinecrest Canyon. Let's talk about the Brigham Fork well. Mr. Eric Cox would like for you to believe today that they're having mechanical issues with the Brigham Fork well, which is not true. Well, partially true. And the problem is this: ever since they put the system in operation, it has been contaminated with iron bacteria, as recorded in the EID trustee meeting minutes here. He notes, Brigham Fork well has been a workhorse. Complaints about the well, colored water in the well, stemming from bacteria have been minimal. Also notes that Mr. Eric Cox, if you go to the website, Mr. Eric Cox reported that the Brigham Fork well failed EPA standards for sulfates and turbidity, which is exactly why it's offline today. The problem is here, the annual drinking water report, EID reported to its customers that the water was excellent and you have a safe, dependable source of water. Well, is it safe? Well, these are the notes from Dr. Inesco, who's available for questions. He notes in the sanitation survey that the wildflower reservoir, its temporary change application, or its temporary permit for operation as a public drinking water supply, had actually expired. And the Boyer well number 2 never had been issued an operating permit and could not be based upon this letter from September 20th, 1995. We have not received a copy of that letter, even though we've asked for it. And how's the Emigration Canyon stream doing? Well, one of the things that Mr. Barnett determined in his thesis is that the Emigration Canyon stream and the groundwater are in fact in direct communications, not how Mr. Barnett portrays it here today. In fact, Mr. Barnett in 1995, on December 15th, reported that, as you can see here, water quality suggests that surface water and the groundwaters are from the same source. In the hearing before this body on December 15th, under Water Right 577479, Mr. Barnett argued exactly the opposite. The Boyer Company intended to put a well where the Upper Freeze Creek well is, and Mr. Barnett, his father, I should say, Jack Barnett, in the presence of Mr. Don Barnett, reported that if Boyer was allowed to drill the Upper Freeze Creek well, pretty much where it has been drilled here today and asking your approval for, it would dry up the Emigration Canyon stream for decades. 25, 50, 75 years is his prediction. That's his testimony to shut down that water right proposed by the Boyer Company at that particular point in time. Why were they arguing that? They argued during that meeting that they had a lease contract with the Utah State Parks and Recreations at the mouth of Emigration Canyon, and that well would actually impair. So this idea that water is somehow piped down the side of the mountain, contrary to gravity, well, I haven't seen any scientific evidence to support that view at all. The major problem with the federal funds that they got was this, in the technical memorandum, is that they were worried about the decreased stream flow and the providing habitat to the Bonneville cutthroat trout. Mr. Barnett testified and provided information that the potential problems with the wells, if they were drilled and used, would be negligible because it would cause little net water depletion. We believe that statement to be inaccurate. Finally, again, any reduction in stream flow will increase the opportunity for bacteria to contaminate existing water supplies. And once again, this is what the Emigration Canyon stream looks like at this location and completely dried up less than 2 miles from Utah's Hogle Zoo. And again, Immigration's own build-out limits based on the Barnett thesis stating there will be no more than 185 future allocations of water. They've blown this a long time ago. And in fact, if they had followed this, this would have been the Emigration Oaks development, limited to this. But that's not even the main problem. In fact, Immigration Improvement District has argued over and over again that they are not working with developers. As you see here from the EID meeting minutes, that they're working closely with Mr. Plum. This is in 2012. If he chooses to develop his property, they want to make sure that he has potential for a new water source, along with, quote unquote, the Walsh project, which we know now is a gun range proposed at the very, very top of Emigration Canyon. How they were able to keep that out of the public view as long as they did is beyond me, but an Emigration Canyon resident did catch it literally days before they had that proposal reviewed by both the Emigration Canyon Community Council and the Planning Commission, who is actually chaired by the co-chairman of Immigration Improvement District, Mr. Brent Tippett, today. So what is the current cost of this future development proposed here today for the 649 acre feet? Well, predicted impairment would be almost a certainty in 66. How accurate was that? Well, let's take 2 points here. You have the Upper Freeze Creek well. The 2 wells that have been operated and drilled under temporary change applications are asking your approval for today are in red. This is a private owner, well owner not connected to the EID water system. This has a priority date of September 12th, 2018, along with every single well they operate for unknown reasons. And the well priority date down here at the bottom, 1933. And this is exactly how it looks. Distance between the wells is a little over 7,000 feet. Why is that a problem? The water level of that well, as recorded in June 2015. Private wells that we have documentation have reported impoundment to date is 40 plus. I'd like to say also that this idea of the monitoring wells, if you refer back to the thing, you'll see that when they were drilling the Upper Freeze Creek well, they were not looking at their monitoring wells at all. As far as the feasibility of this study, I'd like to point out to this tax notice that was given for the quote EID fire hydrant rental fee of somebody who's not connected to the water system. He should refuse to pay the $1,000. Her home will be sold in May of this year. So, what if you were to deny these permanent change applications to the EID water right? Well, again,
Mr. Tracy?
I'm sorry, would you like me to stop?
Yes, your time is up.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Pardon me? For him to continue? What's your name? Okay, I do have you listed here.
If anybody else would like to see their time, I'd be more. I've actually only have about 5 more minutes. I'm sure I can wrap it
Let's
up.
just give you 5 minutes.
Absolutely, not a problem. This is the.
He said 45 minutes, and the instructions were that people had to get their time before the hearing.
Let's just give 5 more minutes for this one gentleman. I won't do any others.
Thank you. This is the priority date, current priority date of Boyer well number 1, March 9th, 1983. Deny the application, that's the priority date. Boyer well number 2, you deny the application, has a priority date of 1993, not September 12th, 2018. In closing, it is disconcerting that a small number of individuals over a period of 30 years can do such perhaps irreversible economic and environmental damage to a large geographic area such as Emigration Canyon that you see here. It is more disconcerting this occurred at a place of incredible historical significance, both to the state of Utah and to the followers of the Mormon faith. It's perhaps most disheartening, however, that this occurred with limited, if any, public input through the series of temporary change applications filed by EID for the construction of large diameter commercial wells located less than 6 miles from where we are standing here today. Now, and after the fact, EID is asking the Utah State Engineer to approve permit change applications for a water system it already built. However, the EID water system was not built for the existing canyon residents with superior water rights who are present here today, but to remedy and allow for massive development and use of 649 acre-feet of surface water flow located at the bottom of the canyon. Evidence collected in the form of thousands of pages of documents and hundreds of hours of voice recordings over a period of 5 years supports that there was only one appropriate decision: the denial of EID's permit change applications A 44045 and A 44046 in their entirety, and the immediate termination of water extraction from the Upper Freeze Creek and Brigham Fork wells operated by EID. With the current and pending federal case against EID managers, trustees, and land developers, and others will determine who will pay for over $6.3 million of public funds used to construct these costly and destructive wells. Your decision today will determine if impairment of the Emigration Canyon stream and these people's superior water rights will continue or if it'll be stopped. It is perhaps ironic that your denial of these applications will ensure the earlier priority date of Boyer wells number 1 and 2 for the benefit of homes already constructed and connected to the EID water system. Let there be no doubt, much like the litigation of water rights in Emigration Canyon commenced exactly a century ago, the Echo Association will ensure the decision today will be scrutinized to the fullest extent of the law and possibly by the highest courts of the state. Thank you.